another Silverbird collection roundup video, and this time around I'm looking at the top 10 re-release games from the Firebird budget range. So Firebird re-released 23 games from a number of different companies, including Electric Dreams, Mirrorsoft, Palace Software and most notably Activision, and there will be a lot of Activision games in this list. So when I was looking to compile this list, I looked at any game that I'd reviewed and given a score for playability of 6 or higher. I then played them all again, ranked them into order and put them into this top 10. So let's check it out!
Kicking off this list in 10th place is Decathlon, a Silver Range release from 1987 that was originally published by Activision in 1984, and you're going to hear me saying that a lot during this video. Speed, strength, discipline and training come together as you test your abilities in the most grueling of athletic competitions. There are 10 events obviously, and the game allows for up to 4 players to play against each other, taking turns in the field events, while 2 players may compete against each other in the track events at any one time. To run, move the joystick as fast as you can left and right. In the field events, move the joystick as fast as you can and then press the fire button to either jump or throw. Originally published on the Atari 2600 in 1983, this is one of the original multi-event athletics games along with track and field. This is a very good port of the Atari game with much improved graphics, in particular the sprites are nicely drawn and well animated. The most notable problem is the lack of sound, as there's only an introductory tune and a few spot effects here and there, such as when you score over 1,000 points and the crowd roars. Gameplay wise there's not much variety, it's all just waggling the joystick and then pressing fire to either jump or throw. Unlike track and field where you can set the angle of throwing or jumping, there's not a lot of precision in this one. With joystick waggling required in every event, the 400 metres and 1500 metres are absolute killers, although the latter does at least allow for slow waggling for the most part. If you're interested in seeing just how exhausted you can get playing this game, then check out my original review video. I'd say Decathlon hasn't aged exceptionally well. It is a little bit tedious as a one-player game, but it's probably still quite fun as a multiplayer one. In 9th place is Antiriad, or to give it its full name, the Sacred Armour of Antiriad. This is a Silverbird release from 1988, originally published by Palace Software in 1986. Centuries after a nuclear war, a new race of men emerged. They led a simple and peaceful life, farming, hunting and telling tales around their fires at night. Suddenly their lives were darkened by evil invaders from a far-off world. The people fought bravely, but against such might they stood little chance. The elders plotted to overthrow their oppressors, and they hid newborn males and reared them in secret camps, training them for the final battle. One male, Tal, stood out and was chosen as the last hope, the man who would save the race. Tal has been sent on a quest. He has been shown the last remaining blueprint of the armour, a sacred scroll outlining the magic it can perform. He must search the forests, find the suit, and use its power to destroy the central generator of the tyrants. This is a pretty impressive adventure platformer / shooter from the team behind Cauldron 2, which was also re-released in the Silverbird packaging. The graphics are great and the animation is fantastic, while the in-game sound effects are also pretty cool, but not as good as the Richard Joseph tune on the title screen. This game was rated very highly back in the day, but just like the Cauldron games, it's got some really frustrating issues that stop it being truly great. The respawning enemies are a particular bugbear of mine, while the screen flip that occurs just before you reach the edge of the screen can cause some frustrating moments too. Also, when you've mobilised the suit, you get issues with bouncing off scenery as you try to manoeuvre through tight passages. There can also be issues with the suit running out of energy and leaving you stranded in a dangerous area, even places where you can't get out of the suit due to radioactivity. That was quite a lot of niggles, but with practice all these can be overcome and make for a challenging and interesting game, although I still think it was overrated by the press when it was first released. At number 8 is River Raid, a Silver Range release from 1987, originally released by Activision in 1984. You are a fighter pilot with an important but deadly mission. You must destroy a number of vital enemy bridge links that are well defended by helicopter gunships, deadly land tanks, ships and observation balloons. Manoeuvre your way down the meandering river valley, avoiding the cliffs on either side and destroying the enemies. Keep an eye on your fuel gauge and collect more fuel by passing over the fuel dumps. You can score points by destroying enemy crafts and fuel dumps, and extra points are awarded if a bridge is destroyed while a tank is crossing it. River Raid is an iconic vertically scrolling shooter, and this is a great conversion of the Atari 2600 original. The graphics and sound are improved compared to the Atari version, but they are still quite simple. The gameplay is simple too, but it's also lots of fun. It's got a great difficulty curve as you encounter more hazards and increasingly aggressive enemies as the levels progress. All the while you must balance shooting the enemies with a collection of fuel, speeding up and slowing down to time the progression past bridges and tanks correctly. By the time it was re-released in 1987 it probably would have seemed quite dated, but it's still a classic and was well worth the $1.99 asking price. At number 7 is Pitfall 2, a Silver Range release from 1987, originally released by Activision in, you guessed it, 1984. Pitfall Harry must travel through the treacherous caverns beneath Peru in search of your niece Rhonda, the cursed Raj Diamond and Quick Claw the cat, and avoid the deadly perils that await you. The game has no time limit, and whenever Harry succumbs to any danger he doesn't die but is transported to the last red cross he touched. A perfect score is 199,000, which means you must collect all 28 gold bars, Rhonda, the Raj Diamond, Quick Claw the cat, the Stone Age rat, and never fall victim to a single danger. Here's another classic Atari 2600 game given a spruce up for the Commodore 64 with more detailed graphics and a great SID rendition of the original version's tune, although it does get a little bit repetitive. This is a vast improvement on the original Pitfall with more varied challenges and interesting environments. Losing score instead of lives each time you hit means that exploration is the focus and you can effectively play the game forever. There are a few annoying aspects, such as being sent miles back to a checkpoint if you get hit before you can find another one, and those bloody annoying frogs jumping backwards and forwards over the entrance to stairways. Having said that, this is still an excellent platformer even for the time that the budget release came out, and offered plenty of challenge and playability for the price. Coming in at 6th place is Rock and Wrestle, a Silver Range release from 1987 that was originally published by Melbourne House in 1985. In this pro wrestling simulation you are Gorgeous Greg, the blonde hero. In one player mode as the 5th ranked contender your task is to overcome all the other contenders twice until you become world champion. You must pin each opponent within a time limit without being pinned yourself. If the time expires you'll lose the match by default. You'll face a variety of opponents including Redneck McCoy, the Missouri Breaker, Vicious Vivian and the world champion Lord Toff. In 2-player mode you can play any character and the winner is the first player to pin his opponent twice within a given time limit. I was a huge wrestling fan back in the 80s and this was without doubt my favourite wrestling game on the C64. It's got a pretty complex grappling system with loads of moves possible, which does mean it takes a while to get used to the controls. The sprites are chunky but well animated for all the different moves and they've got lots of character with the typical tropes from 80s wrestling. There's also some decent sound effects and the catchy background tune will be an earworm for many days to come after playing. Each opponent has a slightly different strategy to defeat and it can be somewhat unfair against a computer as you can get pinned too easily. For that reason it's probably much more fun as a 2-player game. Back in the day Zap magazine gave this a rating of 53%, which I think is pretty harsh. It may not be the most attractive of games but I really enjoy it. Moving into the top 5 now, and all of these games are re-releases of Activision titles. In 5th place is Beamrider, a Silver Range release from 1987 that was originally published by Activision in 1984. A huge beam matrix is formed within the vicinity of your home planet, and beamer ships are at this very moment launching an attack. Your mission is to infiltrate the matrix and annihilate all enemy craft. Your vessel appears at the bottom of the screen. There are 7 different types of ship to be dealt with, the most important of which are the white saucers. 15 of these must be destroyed before you can proceed to the next level. You must also be careful to avoid the indestructible kamikaze craft. Contact with yellow rejuvenators adds another ship to your reserve, but if shot, the burning debris hurtles towards you and contact with it will prove fatal. When 15 sources have been destroyed, you must attempt to destroy the mothership, which is guarded by a swarm of green suicide ships. To destroy the mothership, you have 3 energy torpedoes. A direct hit from the torpedo causes the mothership to explode, and a bonus is awarded according to the level and the number of ships remaining. This is an excellent old school arcade style single screen twitch shooter. It's got a perfect difficulty curve, with early levels being really easy but gradually introducing more complex and dangerous enemies. It's also got some good scoring mechanics, with more points being awarded on later levels for destroying the mothership, and there's also an element of risk reward for trying to grab the ship that gives an extra life on each stage. The graphics are very simple and blocky, but they do serve the purpose quite well. The sounds are basic too, but the background pulsing noise cleverly increases the tension, getting faster as the game gets harder. I'd never played this game before doing this series, but it's another gem from Activision's back catalogue that got a second lease of life from this budget release. In 4th place is Zenji, a Silver Range release from 1987 that once again was released by Activision originally in 1984. In this puzzle game you must direct Zenji through the microcircuits of the Delta B reactor to provide a continuous circuit, but don't run out of time or the Proteo converter power source will inevitably atomise you. The object of the game is to turn all the corridors green. This is achieved by moving Zenji to a chamber and rotating the pathway so that the source can use it to transfer power. A timer will continually count down at the bottom of the screen, and if this reaches 0 and the circuit is not being completed, you'll have spent too long in proximity to the reactor and will vaporise. The less time you take, the more points you'll score, and whenever contact is made with a numbered square you'll receive a bonus of 100 times that number. This is another one I'd never played before doing this series, and it's another great game from Activision. I've discovered a previously unknown love for action puzzle games doing this series, and along with Brainstorm and Collapse, this is another highlight from that genre. It's yet another game with a great difficulty curve, with small, fairly easy to complete stages to begin with before ramping up the complexity, with the enemies also becoming more aggressive as you progress through the game. The time limit can be pretty strict on later levels, meaning you need to work fast on those stages to rotate all the pieces to connect the circuit. Once again, it's pretty simple from a graphics perspective, that's pretty much a standard from 1984, while the Far Eastern style tune does grate a little, although it also fits the game really well. Overall, Zenji epitomises the early Activision games. It's easy to get into, hard to master, challenging and very playable. Moving on to my top 3 re-releases then, and in 3rd place is Hero, another Activision release from 1984 given the Silver Range re-release treatment in 1987. You must guide Roderick Hero, a member of the helicopter emergency rescue operations, through the labyrinth of chambers and shafts to find the miners trapped by a freak explosion and buried deep underground and behind walls of rubble. You'll need all the dexterity, skill and courage you have to guide your copter backpack through the torturous chambers ahead. To pass through the brick walls that stand in your way, you can either fire at them with your gun or you can drop a stick of dynamite near the wall and retreat to a safe distance. You must also avoid the bats, monsters and perils that will try to prevent you reaching the trapped miners. This is an absolute classic from Activision, a brilliant enhancement to the Atari 2600 original, which is also great, and one of the first games I ever played on the C64 in the mid-80s. Like all the other Activision games, graphics and sound are pretty simple, but the playability is top notch, and again it has a near perfect difficulty progression with easy stages leading to bigger and more dangerous ones. As your air supply is diminishing, you must balance the speed of progression through each stage with careful strategy and precise movement to avoid the enemies and environmental hazards. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point, having looked at so many Activision games, but this is addictive, still very playable and more than worth the $1.99 budget price that Firebird were charging. In 2nd place we have American Road Race, originally called the Great American Cross Country Road Race, and for a bit of a change this was a Silverbird release from 1988, originally released by Activision in 1985. From sea to shining sea the race is on, rally across the nation in high gear in any of 4 cross-country challenges. Los Angeles to New York, Seattle to Miami, San Francisco to Washington or a full US tour. It'll take more than just good driving to reach your destination though. You'll need to select the race, map out the best route, check road and weather conditions, look out for speed traps, watch your gas level, go easy on the clutch, and above all, beat the clock. This is another one I'd not played before doing this series, but it's a really impressive driving game where you choose one of several routes to drive across America from city to city trying to beat your rivals. It offers a pretty realistic driving experience for the time, with gear changes, the need to refuel, police speed traps, night and day cycles and different weather conditions. The graphics are decent and fast moving, giving a good representation of speed, and there's some variety in the scenery too. It's quite impressive for a single load, and there's also a good dashboard status display with lots of info to help you on your journey. Slowing down to refuel can be a bit of a pain and some of the stages can be quite laborious, but that's kind of the point for a cross-country road race, isn't it? This is an excellent game for 1985 that would still have compared favourably to other driving games when re-released in 1988. It's much better than the home conversion of Outrun, for example. And finally, my number one Firebird re-release is Park Patrol. Silver Range release from 1987, and you guessed it, it was originally released by Activision in 1984. There's trouble down at Papa Toto Park. The old keeper has had a nervous breakdown and the place has gone to the dogs. You're invited to take up the challenge of becoming the new man or woman in charge of the park. As park ranger, you'll be equipped with a raft, snake repellent and a few morsels of nourishment. Your task is to clear the litter up, watch for swimmers in distress and keep the park wildlife in line. The park is no place for wimps though, and is full of hazards such as swamps, snakes and swimmers who will sink your raft, river logs and food stealing ants. Number 1 was never going to be anything but this, one of my all-time favourite C64 games from any publisher. The initially simple premise conceals hidden depths with loads of secrets you can exploit for bonus points, or ignore if they're too complex, such as the log rolling for example. While the game starts off quite easily, there's so much going on that it can become quite frantic at times balancing all the tasks, from collecting litter to avoiding wildlife and rescuing stricken swimmers. You also have to remember to head back to the hut to top up on food now and then. Already a brilliantly playable game, what adds even more value to it is the customizability where you can tweak the parameters for each level. Another brilliant touch is the ability to choose a male or female park ranger. It's absolutely not needed, but all the better because of it. Park Patrol is a truly original, charming and addictive classic, and if you've never played it then you should rectify that right now. It was never actually sold at full price in the UK, so this Firebird budget release was one of the biggest bargains in the history of Commodore 64 gaming. That brings another roundup video to an end, and all I can say is it's a very good job that Firebird managed to license all those games from Activision. Overall though, I'd say that's a brilliant list of games, but what are your thoughts? Were there any Firebird re-releases that you would have included instead of these 10, or any games you'd move up or down the list? If you've got any thoughts about this selection then please let me know in the video comments. I've got one more collection roundup video coming up next week, and then that'll finally bring the Silverbird selection to an end for the time being. As always, thanks very much for watching this video, and come back soon for the next one.